Hey everyone, welcome to Sideline Sports on DBNA Television. We're here with our guest host, Eric Wilson. How are we doing tonight, Eric?
Gentlemen, good evening. Appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Tell
We
our
appreciate you
audience a
being here.
little bit about yourself before we go on. Just
Oh yeah.
the man that you are, because you are you're pretty awesome in the media field.
So your man Eric Wilson, host of the Sports Arena, alongside my brother Jon Shearer and several other members. We're live every Monday and Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Hoping to get to DBA like my brothers here on Sideline Sports on DBNA TV. Cover the NFL, cover the NBA, cover the WNBA. Just a media guy working his way through the trenches, really.
This guy's humble. He covers the Orlando Magic. He's covered the Toronto Raptors. He's covered the Bucks. He's covered all kinds of teams. He's covered everything. The WNBA covers the Chicago Sky. He's humble, and this guy covers a lot of things in person. He was at the Super Bowl covering that in February. Yeah. So don't let him fool you. This guy, he's done a lot.
He's just being humble, right, Eric?
Listen, it's one of those things where I kind of let my work speak for itself. I take a lesson from something that Candace Parker said at the WNBA final. She said, you don't always have to have the loudest mouth. Sometimes let your work speak for itself. And I've taken a page out of that, and I've allowed what I do with great men such as yourselves and others, and just let that be my mouthpiece.
I like it. All right.
All right, Jake, do you want to take care of our sponsors?
Yes, sir. That was what I was going to say. Before we continue with this, as most of you already know, we are sponsored by the great Score No Score. As you can see on the screen, Score No Score, it's a relatively new app. We work very closely with the owner and creator of the app, Eric. Eric and I and John and JB are always talking to him. If you're not checking out Score No Score, please go check it out. It's awesome. It's basically sports betting without having to spend real money, which is my favorite part. I'm not a gambler. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not a gambler. John, you're not a gambler either, but I know you and I can both attest that it's a lot of fun. You spend in-game tokens and basically bet. If it's football, whether or not the team is going to score on the current drive. And if it's baseball, are they going to score in the top of the inning or bottom of the inning? It's that simple. And you compete against friends and other people online. It's a lot of fun. John, anything you want to add before we?
Yeah, it's relatively cheap. I mean, think of it like microtransactions with, say you have a phone app, a game on your phone, and you want to buy something cosmetic on that game. It's kind of like that, where you could buy the coins. They give you coins for free to start.
Yep.
And then once you're out, you can buy more, but they're cheap. I believe it's like 99 cents for a bunch. So it's cheap. It's like having a phone game on your app that you can play, but instead it's kind of like fantasy football as well, because it uses the actual games that are happening.
Exactly.
And you can interact and chat with other people that are in that lobby. So that's pretty cool. And we recommend you check it out on the Google Play and Apple.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So just look up Score No Score on whatever device you're using, and hey, come play against us. Good luck, because I don't know about John. I haven't paid attention to how much you're making, buddy, but I'm doing pretty good
positive.
For myself.
Yeah, I am too. I'm up over 1,000.
I've more than doubled my money, so I'm doing pretty good. So again, Score No Score, thank you for sponsoring us, and go check them out. All right, on to the main event, gentlemen. John, what topic do you want to start with today? Because I know we talked. There's a lot of NFL stuff we want to cover. Today being the trade deadline. This today at 4 p.m. is one of the things, but it was a big day. There was a lot of stuff going on this week. So where would you like to start?
Well, we talked a little bit last night on the Sports Arena about Derrick Henry and kind of his impact. But, I mean, we can kind of get your opinion, and I'll talk about that as well, because, I mean, that is big. It changes the dynamic of the AFC, changes the dynamic of the NFL, because, the Titans were, 5-2? They were looking viable. They beat the Bills. In an important game. They beat the Bills recently. So, I mean, the Titans were looking really good, better than we had thought. And Julio Jones hasn't even really played this year.
Yep.
And the defense, we know, isn't very good, but they've been playing better. So this was a team that was playing better than the Chiefs, playing better than the Bills, playing better than almost anybody in the AFC. But without Derrick Henry, I mean, I'm not so sure that there's any chance for this team, any hope for this team. I don't know what you think. Do they have a shot?
They were 5-2 going into that game. They won the game. They go 6-2, but they lose Derrick Henry. Here's the simple fact: the Colts are 3-5. They're only just a bit behind,
but they got swept,
and that's fine.
So they have to have a game over the Titans in order to.
That's
beat them.
Fine. Right. But my thing is, I don't know that the Titans are going to win many more games, and I only say that because this loss of Derrick Henry is going to make them a one-dimensional team now. They're going to be a passing offense, and that's basically what it is. They brought in Adrian Peterson. Okay, great. But I'm sorry, Adrian Peterson is not what he was. He's a shell of himself at best. He'll be nice. It'll feel cool to have him there. But truthfully, I think it's more than anything just a name. Adrian Peterson is okay, but we saw what he did last year. He wasn't great. I know he wasn't the feature back, but he's not great, and he's not going to put up the numbers. Their run game is not going to be what it was. Now, I do believe they can still run the ball because they do have a solid offensive line, and I think they're going to have an okay job running the ball just because of the offensive line, but I don't think they're going to have the strength that they had with Derrick Henry, which is going to put a lot of pressure on Ryan Tannehill, and I'm not so certain that this offense is going to be what it was because their game really was rely on Derrick Henry, run the ball down your throat, get them tired, and score with Derrick Henry for the most part. The fact that Julio hasn't played a lot is also not going to help them because they were hoping to have that 1-2 punch on the receiving core with A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and then have the tailback and Derrick Henry be the bruiser. They lose him. Julio Jones is not playing. The offense becomes even more one-dimensional now because it's really – with Julio not playing a lot, it's really going to be Ryan Tannehill to A.J. Brown. If you stop A.J. Brown, what do you have? You don't have a lot left in that offense. It's concerning. I don't know that they still win that division. Without Derrick Henry, it's going to be tough. They didn't pick up anybody today at the deadline. I was hoping they would go out and get, there were rumors that guys like Phillip Lindsay were on the trade block. Melvin Gordon was on the trade block, and they're not the best running backs, but they're serviceable backs with good offensive line. They would have done themselves wonders in Tennessee, I think. So I'm a little worried about the Titans right now. And I think I think the way the Colts are playing overall, they did lose to the Titans. You're right, but I think they're a good enough team that they're gonna be able to have a chance at this division right now.
My take on this is Derrick Henry is someone who basically set the tone for that team. But Jake, when you talked about Adrian Peterson, granted, he might not have been the Adrian Peterson that we have known him to be and seen in his career. However, when you said he's serviceable, I think that's what's needed right now in Tennessee. We don't need a Derrick Henry 2.0. We need someone to be serviceable because of Julio Jones, because of AJ Brown. I think those two pieces will complement Ryan Tannehill and will allow Ryan Tannehill to be still successful. I'm still up in the air about this just because of the defensive side of the ball. Their next few games are against teams that are winnable games for Tennessee. But to John's point, the Colts have to find a way to really get their motor running now and seize this opportunity. And I think that's going to be the biggest piece is can Indianapolis not only keep pace, but overtake Tennessee? Because that's what's going to need to happen for them to win this division. If not, Tennessee will get into the postseason. But I really feel like at that point, Tennessee will be one and done. They will get a home game, and depending on where they fare, whether it be the 3 or even the 4 seed, because I think 1 and 2, in my estimation, I think are going to pretty much be Baltimore and the Los Angeles Chargers. Those are my 1 and 2. Cincinnati might get it done, but I think they're going to fall short to Baltimore, even though they have beaten Baltimore just recently. So now it's a question of, where do the rest of these teams fall? And it's unfortunate that double-digit win teams are going to be 5, 6, and 7. But getting back to Tennessee and Derrick Henry, if Adrian Peterson can be a serviceable back, I would still put him above a lot of these other running backs just because we've seen this man come back from a major injury and still play at a high level. He's not as elite as we may have deemed him to be once before, but right now, he is, I think, the piece that is going to help. Jake, to your point, not that many blockbuster trades that happened today at the trade deadline, and we discussed this before coming on. I want to pose this question to you and to John, if I may. If the Tennessee Titans would have acquired another wide receiver, a top tier wide receiver, do you think your opinion might have changed if they had gotten another weapon to give to Ryan Tannehill?
I'll let John field that first.
I honestly think that they should have went and got a tight end, maybe a Hayden Hurst or an Evan Ingram or somebody like that, or even Gesicki from us. I think they should have went and got a tight end because they lost Jonnu Smith last year, who I know he's not great, but they don't really have anything at the tight end spot now that he's gone. And Julio isn't the guy that we had all anticipated that he would be this year. So they really only have A.J. Brown to count on. And we know Adrian Peterson's not catching the ball out of the backfield. He's never done that. So when he goes into the game, it's going to be run the ball or pass block. You don't have to worry about going out and covering him out of the backfield. Derrick Henry had that problem for years, but they started to utilize him out of the backfield, catching the ball more because otherwise the defense knows what's coming when Henry came in. Peterson's not catching the ball, and he's not elite anymore. He's not that guy anymore. So we know that when he comes in, he's only running it. So really, pass-wise, they only have A.J. Brown to throw to. I mean, I don't believe in Julio this year. I just don't. I don't see the chemistry. I don't see him staying healthy. I don't see it. I haven't seen it. I saw one game where he was good. One time in 8 games, he's missed 3, he's played 5, and 1 good game. Clearly the guy, one game he can bring that old Julio out of him, but he's just not a guy that you have to worry about in that regard anymore. He's not elite, it seems, because his health is a concern, and that's part of the game. I mean, you eventually wear down and not quite as good as you were, but so that's the problem. Is they should have went and got another weapon, maybe Jamison Crowder, maybe a tight end, but something just to keep the defense honest, because A.J. Brown's going to get bracketed. I mean, he's going to get bracketed, and then they're going to force you to go elsewhere. And who else do you really have?
Yeah, I agree with that completely, actually. I mean, I think a guy that we kind of mentioned it briefly before the show, John, Allen Robinson still doesn't move. The Bears, for whatever reason, just don't want to get rid of him. I don't understand why they keep him. They're not even using him this year. I mean, if you look at his numbers, it's not like he's putting up 100-yard games every week. He's not even doing that. It's not. Clearly the Fields to Robinson connection is not there, and so if it was, I could understand them. All right, maybe let's keep him because we got a young quarterback. Let's keep this weapon for him, but he's not doing it. So if the Titans would have said, yeah, let's go get him, then my tone might have changed. I think I might be singing a different tune, only because then, Eric, you're right. Adrian Peterson can be serviceable, and I say that. I don't disagree. I agree with that. I know I said it, but I'm agreeing that that's very possible. With the offensive line, he can be serviceable. But what the problem is now, because Julio is not doing well, like John was talking about, they need more than just a running back to be serviceable. They need a second weapon. They need, basically right now, they need a number 2 for A.J. Brown, and Julio was supposed to be the number 2 as a receiver, and then have Derrick Henry as the number 3, if you will, right? That third threat at a different position, but a third threat. Now you take away Derrick Henry. You already didn't have Julio really playing well. You're down to really one threat because, John, like you said, I completely agree. He's, Adrian Peterson's not going to be a threat in the passing game. So
Never has been.
And that's fine. And it's not like he's 2012 Adrian Peterson where I'd be really scared to have him on my team, because then if that would be like a Derrick Henry 2.0, right?
Yeah.
Because then I'd be again singing a different tune, because then I'm saying, well, you know what? You were fine with Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown as your primary guys. You were winning games. You were playing well. It was working. And you just replaced Derrick Henry with Adrian Peterson. You have that 2.0 basically, another bruising back that's going to crush teams. That's fine, but they don't have that. So if they got a receiver, I think I'll just say this. If they got another receiver, I think I'd be a little bit different on it, because then I'd say, all right, Peterson can be a serviceable back. He'll gain some yards on the ground. He'll gain 60 to 70 on the ground probably as an average per week. And that's going to be good enough for them because it'll mix up the run plays. They'll have some plays there, but they'll have two weapons that Tannehill can work with. So that will throw the defense off just a little bit because if you're forced to double team one guy, then that might leave somebody else open, even if you're double teaming A.J. Brown. Allen Robinson's going to have one guy in coverage, one guy maybe going to shadow him, deep, right? Then that still opens up the field to your other receivers or tight ends, no matter how good or bad they are, because that's just the way the coverage is going to work out.
So Eric, I have a question. What would you think, because you're a Philly fan, what would you think if Desean Jackson went to the Titans? Because he's cut.
Yes, him and the Rams have mutually agreed to part ways, and there's an opportunity for him to go there, but he's one-dimensional.
But yes, they need somebody that can stretch a field, right?
Right, he can still stretch the field. And the question, though, is can Ryan Tannehill, place it to where only Desean Jackson would be able to go get it? The speed is definitely there. You cannot let him loose because if you let him loose and he turns on that second, third, fourth gear, whichever it is, he's gone. There's no question about it. Even at the age of 33, 34, whatever he is, again, he's a complementary piece. I'm just not sure because we know what he is. You need someone a little more elusive. And that's why, I think we were all under the impression that Julio was going to be that number 2 that Jake spoke of. However, Desean Jackson, as much as I love him, he is one-dimensional. He's a guy that if he comes across the middle, it's going to be a quick slant and then he's gone. And if you can cut him off, he's maybe only get you 7-8 yards. Is that necessary? Of course it is. However, the big plays that we've known him to have, where they used to be maybe 2, 3, sometimes even 4. Now it's only maybe 1 per game, but sometimes 1 per game is all you need.
It could change the game.
It could. You're absolutely right.
So what? I mean, even still, even if he's not running downfield and making those big plays, the defense still has to be honest because if Desean Jackson is lining up in the slot and you have Julio and A.J. Brown on the outside, that defense has to keep eyes on Desean Jackson because much like Tyreek Hill, and to a lesser extent, but still, any play, Desean Jackson can get loose, like you said. And if he gets loose, that's a big play. That's a big 50-yard play or 50-yard touchdown or whatever. So, I mean, the defense at least has to keep their eyes on him as opposed to whoever their slot guy is. You always have to keep your eyes on Tyreek Hill or Desean Jackson. Guys that fast, you cannot take your eyes off him because if you do, there goes a touchdown. So that's something that he also brings. You don't have to worry about, well, he's always hurt. You sign the guy off free agency. You're not paying much. If he gets hurt, he gets hurt. But I mean, there's no risk to it.
I think the problem that you're not pointing out, though, Julio isn't the threat that he was. A, he's hurt. B, he's older and not playing as well. So you're right. Yeah, teams have to pay attention to him. But in that case, you're going to double cover A.J. Brown. You're going to probably single cover Desean Jackson because all you got to do is defend basically either across the middle or
hopefully you're playing zone. You don't want to play man. You don't want to play man to man with Desean Jackson.
You can play a zone on him pretty easily and probably stop him because the truth is he's not what he used to be. When he was younger, he was really scary because his speed was electric.
I don't know. I watch that.
Where I disagree, Jake, is what you say. He's not what he used to be. Okay, find me another 30-year-old plus wide receiver who can still kick it into third gear. You know what I'm saying?
I just mean he's not in terms of
you've got to beat him off the bump and run. Okay, you've got to beat him or contain him within the first 5 to 7 yards off the line. If you're able to do that, then you can contain him. But if he runs, and I've watched this numerous times, trust me.
Yeah, you're a Giants fan. You know that, Jake.
Thanks, John. Thank you for the reminder because I didn't remember that. I really forgot about that.
I was trying to be nice. This is not the sports arena, but I'm saying if you let him get loose and he can break ankles and Tannehill is aware of that, I'm telling you, that's going to set up a major play. Think about it like this. Run with me for 1 minute, if you will. So Tannehill is successful if Desean Jackson was to come to Tennessee. Like you said, they're going to double team AJ Brown. AJ Brown, yes.
Brown, yeah.
They double team AJ Brown. Deshaun beats his man within those first 5 to 7 yards. Tannehill finds him going across the middle. He finds Deshaun. Deshaun's got one guy to beat, whether it be a nickel or a safety or a corner, whatever the case may be. All right, let's say Deshaun doesn't get past him, but still you've got a 20 or 30-yard gain. Now you're further along. What does that do? It opens up the playbook. It opens up the playbook for a serviceable Adrian Peterson, to who you know is a north-south guy. Sometimes he likes to go east and west. But if that offensive line can create a hole and create space, I'm pretty sure the wily vet that is Adrian Peterson can run through it.
Yeah.
See, now you're moving the chains. And I think that is where we sometimes get too caught up in the fact that they are older. They are true wily veterans.
But they're
with
veterans,
age
you're right.
Come experience. So if the Tennessee Titans were able to secure an Adrian Peterson and a Desean Jackson, I would then give the nod and say, okay, sitting at 5-2, this is still your division. I would then have to say, the Colts, you are going to have to play phenomenal football and run the table in order to win. But those two pieces, still with the ability to do what they do, not on the highest level, but not so much on a level that is, I still put them at, on a scale of 1 to 10 here, I still give them a 6, almost a 7, because I know what I've seen. Yes, we know their flaws, but we also know their strengths. And if Mike Vrabel has learned anything, I'm sure, from Bill Belichick, it's how to scheme according to the talent that you have.
That's fair. I think my only other thing is Julio is, I don't know how often he's going to be on the field, which is part of the other concern that I was thinking about is I like your scenario. Your scenario does work if all three are on the field together, meaning Julio, AJ Brown, Desean Jackson. But that is something you kind of touched on, John, is Desean Jackson. Well, if he gets hurt, he gets hurt. Well, that's the problem. Desean Jackson, as he is older, he just, from what I've seen, it feels like he's a little more prone to injury now. And
yeah, but there's no risk to it. I mean, what are you risking?
I'm just saying, but more importantly, what I was going to say, Julio is also prone to injury. So my fear would be, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying, playing the other side, right? You'd have two injury-prone receivers.
To be fair, the whole NFL is injury-prone this year.
You're right. But you're right. But I feel like right now what the Titans need before they go get a guy like Desean Jackson is just somebody they can trust will be on the field for them. That's what they need right now. They need a guy that they can say, he'll be out there. He can play alongside A.J. Brown for now. Even if it's not a superstar, they just need somebody else that they can trust will be out there for, 13, 14, 15 games, maybe miss a game or two because of maintenance, whatever. That happens, that's okay. But play almost every game. That's what they need. And Desean Jackson is not that. Julio Jones is not that. They need somebody else. And if they had that, then the guy like Desean Jackson makes a little more sense because then you have a little more room to play risky. Why? Because, you lost your running back, but you got another guy to play alongside with A.J. Brown. And if you have a 4-receiver set at any point, you can have Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, whoever this X guy is that is, that consistent player, right? And Desean Jackson.
I can tell you for sure, if they have a 4 or 5 wide receiver set this Sunday night on Sunday Night Football, they'll be dead because Von Miller and Aaron Donald, you can't have a 4 or 5 wide receiver set.
No, you're right.
Letting those guys basically, single covered, one lineman on those guys, both of them. I mean, good luck, Ryan Tannehill. So you're not going to probably see a whole lot of 4 or 5 wide receiver sets Sunday night. I'm just saying.
I think that was a nice transition, John.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the next topic we have to talk about. It was funny. We said, there weren't any blockbuster trades on the deadline, but there was a blockbuster trade the day before the deadline on a Monday. And boy, oh boy, was it a good one. I mean, I just tip my hat to the Rams. I mean, look, the Rams trade for Von Miller and sent what? It was a
second and third.
It was okay. That's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was 2 second-day draft picks. I couldn't remember if it was a second and a third, or if it was 2/3. I knew it was something like that. So they send a second and a third, and they bring in Von Miller. Oh, just think about that defense for a second. The defensive line. You had Leonard Floyd and you had Aaron Donald already. That was scary as it was. Now you bring Von Miller, who, I mean, is one of the highest. He has one of the highest sack totals since entering the league. One of the only other guys with a higher sack total since entering the league is the guy that's going to be on the other side of him now is going to be Aaron Donald. You have two of the highest sack guys since they respectively joined the league. I mean, come on. And that's not to mention the fact that you already have Jalen Ramsey in your secondary. I mean, boy, oh boy. Is this the best defense in the NFL?
So Von Miller, I mean,
I ask that seriously because they really might be.
I mean, right now the Bills are the best ranked defense in the NFL. They're basically number one in every category possible. So, except turnovers, the Bills are basically number one in every statistical defensive category. So,
and they're very
right
good.
now, you can't take away from what the Bills have done.
You're right.
Except for they played a soft schedule. But other than that,
you
I mean,
don't
a
play the
little
guys
bit
on your
overrated,
schedule.
but yeah.
But my thing is, on paper, at least, are they the best defense in the NFL? At least on paper.
On paper, of course they are. I mean, you can't ignore the addition of Von Miller and what he brings, the veteran presence, the fact that he is one of the best edge rushers in the game. I mean, this is a guy. Is he?
I just have to ask you because he hasn't had double-digit sacks since 2018.
All right, but here's what hold on. Here's what I'm going to say real quick to that.
He's been injured a lot, hasn't hit double-digit sacks in a while. It maybe like Julio Jones, maybe we're overthinking this a little bit and saying,
no,
hey, the career he's
I want to
had.
say this real quick to John. He may not be what he was, but here's the thing. He's on a team where he doesn't need to be because you had Leonard Floyd, you already had Aaron Donald, who teams already have to worry about. So even if somehow you try and double team both of them, guess what? You still got to worry about Von Miller, which is going to open. That's the problem.
But didn't we say the same thing about Julio Jones and AJ Brown?
And here's the thing. When you have three guys that you have to compete against like that, it opens up a hole for somebody. That was the point I was making with Julio. If there's a third, if there's two guys that you already had to worry about, that's why I said AJ Brown and that X guy, that opens up the field for guys like Julio and Desean Jackson. The same thing is going to happen here. You already have two guys you have to worry about, Leonard Floyd and Aaron Donald. You add Von Miller, somebody's going to have an opportunity.
My point in all this
I didn't mean to cut you off, Eric. I just wanted
no, you're fine. You're fine, John. I understand what you're saying, but you're looking at two different sides of the ball. Okay, offense. Julio Jones, we know what he's capable of. Injuries have played a major part in this, and so the reason why we don't give him the nod per se is because we put a high expectation around him. All right, because he was the guy in Atlanta. That's what he was. He was the guy in Atlanta. When you needed him, that's what he did, except against Philly. Shameless plug for my team. But when you transition to the defensive side, there's a more calculated mindset, if you will, because on the offensive side of the ball, the quarterback's calling the plays. You just have to go out and execute. On the defensive side of the ball, you not only have to know and understand what the offense is attempting to do, number one, but number two, you've got to be able to calculate how to go against that. So for Von Miller not being the double-digit sack guy that we've known him to be, I give 2020 as that was a wash for everybody. Okay, no one was their greatest in 2020. All right. Von Miller, of course, his age does play a factor, but Jake hit the nail on the head. They're not going to ask Von Miller to be the standout that he was or in Denver. They're going to say, listen, we're going to plug you into this system. We just need you to be a disruptor right now. Because by putting this man on the field alongside Leonard Floyd, alongside Aaron Donald, alongside Jalen Ramsey, what does that say to other offensive coordinators? Great. Now I've got to find a way to plan on how to contain not one, not two, but three guys, which means I have to plan to make sure that not one of these guys gets through, because if one of these guys gets through, my quarterback's getting sacked.
Yeah.
So It's one of those things where the name and the historic career of Von Miller plays a major factor into how offensive coordinators now have to scheme when they play against the Los Angeles Rams defense. Are they the best defense on paper? Yes, they are. We will see how it translates, though,
Agreed.
this Sunday night.
Yeah.
So
And John Mazik kind of stole exactly what I was going to say. So thank you, John Mazik, for stealing exactly what I was going to say word for word before I could get it out. I appreciate that. I was going to say that Von Miller had 4 sacks against the Giants, Jags, Jets. Those were 4 of his 4.5 sacks this year. He's played 4 other games. He's had a half a sack since then. So four of his sacks were against terrible teams with terrible lines. And he had, like I said, he had 14.5 sacks in 2018, 10 in 2017. I mean, really, and the years after that, 2019, 2021, 8 and 4.5, like 4.5 this year. So really, he hasn't done much in a while, and he's getting up there. He's 32. I'm not saying that he's not going to disrupt because I know how football works. There's more to defensive linemen than just sacks. I understand the game inside the game, as I preach that a lot. But it's got to be concerning with all the injuries and everything. It's got to be concerning, maybe let's halt the brakes on the Rams winning the Super Bowl just because they got Von Miller. Still got to get through all the injuries, and we know how the NFL is this year. But, I mean, it's something where you kind of have to make sure you do your due diligence, and you don't just say, well, he's Von Miller. Like Julio Jones at the beginning of the year, we all thought, well, now the Titans are unstoppable with Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown and now Julio. But injuries play a part, getting older, red flags, patterns of injuries where you're not sure if they're going to stay on the field. So that's just what I'm saying is, look into it a little bit and make sure you don't just say, well, Von Miller is 26-year-old Von Miller.
Well, here's the way I look at it, though, and this is, I think, the difference between when Julio was added to the Titans versus Von Miller added to the Rams. When Julio was added to the Titans, he was expected to be the receiver number 2. He was expected to play a big part, and they needed him to be on the field to make the plays to help the offense. That was what he was expected to do. The difference is Von Miller is not expected to do that on this defense. He's expected to just add to what this defense already has going for it, and that's what's important. I think that's the biggest difference that you'll see, and that is important to be talked about. Is you already have Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd. That's like having a number 1 and number 2 receiver.
Whoa, hold on. You're all forgetting about Sebastian Joseph Day. I mean, come on. Like, if you watch the Rams at all,
I'm talking about number 1, number 2.
Nobody mentioned Sebastian Joseph Day. That guy is playing out of his mind this year. He's playing a hell of a year. And everybody's overlooking him because Aaron Donald, but he's played a hell of a year. So
that's not the point I'm making.
I know. I'm just saying, give credit to him being there too.
I'm talking about their number 1, their number 2, which is Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd. Everybody knows that. Overall, that would be their number 1 and number 2, and I don't think anybody would argue that. And that was the point I was going to make. When you add a guy like Von Miller, the difference between Von Miller and the Julio stuff is Julio was expected to fill that number 2 role, and he really needed to step up. Von Miller, all he's doing is adding to the excellence on this defense already. So there's already 2 guys that are great, a third that's playing really well right now, right? He's a 4th guy. So even if there wasn't a third, even if it was just Donald and Floyd, even if that was the case, you're adding a 3rd guy, which is the big difference. He's not expected to fill that number 2 role. Instead, he's expected to fill in at number 3. And basically, when 1 and 2 are not getting it done,
right,
1 and 2 are going to get the attention. Number 3 is going to have a chance to now be good. And that's what's important to mention. Is because you compare him to Julio, and I think you're right to do so. I don't think it's a bad comparison in terms of, well, great player in his prime, right?
I just like to analyze.
He was the guy on his team at his position.
Yeah,
that's perfectly accurate. Very more injury prone now. Perfectly accurate. There's nothing wrong with that comparison. I think it's actually a really good comparison. But what I want to point out, which is really the important difference, is Julio was brought in the number 2. He needed to really step up. Vaughn is coming in not to
as
be
a
the
number
number
two.
two. No, he's coming in at the number 3 at best because Leonard Floyd and Aaron Donald already are number 1 and 2. So
Yeah,
his
he's a
job
3,
is now.
John. He definitely is.
His job is
He's a 3.
to fill that number 3.
The guy with
He's not that
110 and a half sacks in his career is a number 3.
Yes. Because he has to be implemented into the system.
Exactly.
Now, will he take over the number 2 spot? That still remains to be seen. But Leonard Floyd is Leonard Floyd. We know what he's capable of. Von Miller is there to provide another piece to that defense. That defense was already great. It just got better with the addition of Von Miller.
Of course.
4.5 sacks. They've added an extra game. I'll take the over-under at maybe 12 and say he finishes with double-digit sacks this year.
I think a good comparison based on what Eric was kind of saying, and I agree with what he said, as he is possible to take over the number 2. It reminds me of when the Bucs, after they got Tom Brady, started adding more receivers like Gronk, Antonio Brown. They already had their number 1 and 2, regardless of who they added, no matter what star caliber it was. They already had Godwin and Evans at the 1 and 2. Now they may have added someone that would take over 1 or 2 and switch the positions around, but they only added guys that were technically 3 and 4. And I put quotes around that because that offensive switches who's 1, who's 2, who's 3, who's 4. It doesn't matter. But when they added them in, they weren't intended to now have to be that number 1 or 2 guy. They were just supposed to be reinforcement. And that's exactly how I see Von Miller. He's just reinforcement. They already have their top guys. They're just adding to what's already great and making it even better.
So are they the best team in the NFC still now? I mean, are the Cardinals, are the Cowboys? We know how much Eric dislikes them. Who's the best team in the NFC? I mean, it's hard to tell this year who's the best in either their respective conferences. It's hard to tell who's the best anywhere because every team's been up and down at some point where you think you got it figured out and then you don't.
Are they the best team in the NFC right now? Can I give you my answer Monday night after I see Von Miller play on Sunday Night Football with Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd? Because we still don't know if the chemistry is going to work.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, but if they come out and have an amazing game, then I would on paper
before
say
him,
yes.
before
But
they even
right
added
now,
him, are they the best team in the NFC before they added him?
No.
Okay.
I would still say, even though JJ Watt is out, I would still put the Cardinals above the Rams. I would still put the Bucs above the Rams.
Yeah.
I got to see how they fare this Sunday, and I think that's going to be very truth-telling. As of right now, who I think the best team is in the NFC, I still have to go with Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're the defending champs. They have 2 losses. But, again, divisional matchup games are so just up and down. You never know what's going to happen. But I feel like we saw this happen last year with the Saints and the Bucs. The Saints swept the Bucs in the regular season and then lost when it counted. And they had Drew Brees. So, what I mean?
The Saints have apparently Tom Brady on the Bucs number. I don't know what it is.
I don't know.
They get him in the regular season, but it doesn't matter because you know what? Who won the Super Bowl last year? Wasn't the Saints. And that's a very good point. You're right.
So what if the Saints, because you heard this today, Philip Rivers would be open to coming back to the Saints. If Philip Rivers came back to the Saints, are they a legit threat to the Bucs in the NFC?
No,
because the Saints are only half a game behind the Bucs for the division now.
No,
I'm not that worried.
And and Michael Thomas hasn't even played this year. Not yet. He hasn't played yet. So
I still say no. I still say even if Philip Rivers came out of retirement, played half a season, again, Philip Rivers, I've always said this and I will continually say it. He will throw you into games and he will throw you out of games. So if he comes in now because they need him, because Jameis, and I hope Jameis gets well, but it does not scare me with him coming in.
I agree. I mean,
even with Michael Thomas coming back, they're a half game behind the Bucs without Michael Thomas playing eight games. That's impressive.
They're not a good team, really, realistically. They lost to the Giants. I mean, I'm a Giants fan.
I mean, the Bengals lost to the Jets, so I can't necessarily say based off of one game. The Rams lost to the Jets last year. I mean, you can't necessarily go that route.
No, but I'm just saying the Saints haven't proven anything to me. Like,
okay,
if you look,
even with the Bucs, I was using the Giants as an example, kind of as a joke. But
They haven't proven much. And I know the Bucs don't prove anything to me, only because, like I said, for some reason they got Tom Brady's number since he's been on the Bucs. To me, it doesn't actually, I don't take too much stock in it, only because of that. If last year Tom Brady beat up on them badly and then they did it, I might feel a little differently. But knowing how last season went in the regular season, it's just kind of one of those things where Tom Brady, I guess, I don't want to say he gets the yips, but he something happens when he plays the Saints in the regular season. Now that he's on the Bucs and he can't beat them. I don't get it. I don't understand it by any means, but something happens. But the Saints haven't looked like what they did last year. Last year, there was something to them that I was like, all right, they're a good team. This year, I'm not seeing that.
Let's go through the 4 division leaders right now. The Cowboys, Packers, Bucs, and Cardinals. Packers and Bucs both got beat by the Saints. Both of them. Division leaders. Both got beat by the Saints this year. Both of them. And it was pretty impressive how the Saints beat both of them teams. So, I'm just saying, they already took out 2 of the division leaders in the NFC. If they played the Cardinals or the Cowboys and they beat one of those 2, would you be impressed by this team?
No?
I mean, they're beating the division leaders, the best teams in the NFC, and you're not giving them their due without Michael Thomas?
Because this is what I'll say with regards to that, John. Look at those 4 teams that you just mentioned. We full on expected at the beginning of this season that those 4 teams were going to be in the playoffs. Did we not? All those 4 teams. Yeah. Okay. Yep. There's always a team that's going to maybe shock or surprise or do the unthinkable, however you want to spin it. And they are going to beat the teams that are the top tier teams. So yes, the Saints did it. But John, I can go back last year and say when the Saints were a good team, Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Saints in New Orleans. You want to call the Eagles a good team then last year at 4-11?
But they beat both of the 2 of the best teams right now that you're going to find.
The defensive coordinator and defensive head coach for the New Orleans Saints, I am sure, game plans for the top quarterbacks in this league, a la an Aaron Rodgers,
Dennis Allen, right? Yeah,
a Tom Brady. You know what I'm saying? A now Matthew Stafford and a Dak Prescott. He game plans and schemes for them. What he does is, shout out to the great late Jim Johnson, who I love, probably one of the best in his position. Do the Saints impress me because they beat those teams? No. Because when it matters is when I'm going to be asking that question. What you do in the regular season does transition and make an impact. But when you get to the playoffs, all that stuff you did those past 17 games, that's wiped away. It's one and done.
All right, we'll see in a couple weeks because the Saints, we don't know what the Titans are now, but they play the Titans in 2 weeks. Then they play your Eagles, which, I mean, they'll get their revenge for that. Then they play the Bills on Sunday night. Okay. So they get their chance at the Bills.
Will be another good test.
Then they play the Cowboys on Sunday night the following week.
Okay.
Play the Jets. Then they go and play the Bucs Sunday night the week after that. So 3 Sunday night games against Bills, Cowboys, and Bucs. Right there, those are 3 opportunities to prove to the world that, hey, we belong. So they have their shot. They already beat the Packers. They already beat the Bucs once. They get the Bills, the Cowboys. They could shut people up. I'm not a Saints person, but I'm just saying, I'm going to give them a little bit of credit. Without Michael Thomas, they've done all of this. Half game behind the world champion Bucs, and they're going to be tested. I think they can handle it if they can get their quarterback situation under wraps.
Beat the Cowboys. Beat the Packers. Beat the Cowboys. Beat the Bills. Sweep the Bucs again. And you will have officially changed my mind. But you have to win all 3.
That'd be a hell of a gauntlet to run through. Hell of a gauntlet.
Hey, we've seen other teams who we did not give them a high expectation, and they were able to be successful. Okay? Do that against those 3 teams, and you will have officially changed my mind about your stance and who you are. But right now, I don't see it. And John Mizak hit the nail on the head, and thank you guys for putting that up. Saints lost to the Panthers and the Giants. Come on.
That says a lot to me.
That Giants game was weird, though. That Giants game was really weird in New Orleans.
And they were at home, weren't they?
Yeah, they were at home, and that was a really weird game that I expected the Saints to dominate.
I want to see what the record is for NFC East teams in the Superdome against the Saints. I want to see what that overall record is, because it's something about when the Eagles or the Giants or the Cowboys or the Washington football team, when they come into the Superdome, it's like they don't party before the game, but they have reason to celebrate after that game. So,
but it doesn't make sense because the NFC East, we just saw this last night. The NFC East does this where the Giants almost beat the Chiefs last night. They had their opportunity to go and beat them. Last year, the Giants almost beat the eventually Super Bowl champion Bucs on Monday Night Football. Same team almost beat the Bucs. Something about the NFC East, I don't understand how it happens, but they lose games that you expect them to ball out, and then games where you think they have no business. I mean, the Eagles went toe to toe with the Chiefs for the first 2.5 quarters this year, and nobody expected that. I thought it'd be a blowout by the end of the first. So I don't understand how the NFC East does this. It makes no sense.
Since you're not an NFC East fan, John, let me bring you into the fold for a minute and explain to you what we do. And Jake, please, I correct me if I'm wrong. See, we beat up on each other. That's what we do. We are just known for that. So what happens is when we lose to one of our divisional opponents, we then have to take it out on somebody else. See, if you've noticed over the last couple of years, the NFC East, the last few weeks of the regular season have been all divisional games. Why? Because other teams are scared of us if we play a divisional opponent and we lose to them. They know we're out for blood. So that's why they said, okay, to protect the rest of the league, we'll put most of NFC East division games towards the end of the season. That way they can beat up on each other and only one team, can get in. That's how that works.
I just don't understand where y'all's motivation is like that every week. You could be in the playoffs, like 2 or 3 of you, if you just had that motivation every week.
The truth is our teams aren't good enough. It's just we're not good enough teams. We just get pissed off and take it out on somebody else. That's all it is. He's right. I mean, look at any of those teams besides the Cowboys. Do any of them really deserve to be in the playoffs? Like, legitimately deserve? No. And the Cowboys, I mean, they're a good team, but even if they weren't as good as they are, they would by default make the playoffs just because they'd be the best team in the division. It's just the way it is. It doesn't mean much. It's just how it is. I mean, I joke every year, but usually this year's might be an exception because the Cowboys do look very good. But for the past, 5-6 years, realistically, I've said whoever comes out of the NFC East, all they're earning is the right to lose in their first game. That's it. That's all that it means. It doesn't mean much.
That's it. One of us has got to come. I mean, John, last year, what was the record? 9-7?
7-9 for the Washington football team. Yeah.
7-9 made the postseason from the NFC and got a home playoff game. Think about that for a second. Champs. You couldn't even go 500, but you still were awarded a home playoff game because you won your division. What does that say? I mean, come on. I have been a huge proponent of if you should have a winning record. It should be the top 7 teams right now. Whatever your record is, you should be the 7 teams that get in. It should not be one from every division. But
Eric,
the only instance of 7-9 where I was impressed was when the Saints went and the Saints lost to the Seahawks because the Seahawks were 7-9. And Beast Quake was born. Beast Mode was born that day in the wild card round, that epic run.
I want to say this, Eric. It's funny you said what you just said about the 7 top teams. I mean, not even an hour ago, maybe a little bit, maybe a little over an hour ago, rather. Excuse me. I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and I said he's a Steelers fan, and he was saying, "What are the chances the Steelers make the playoffs?" And I said, truthfully, based on your division, it's going to be tough because the way the playoffs are set up, it's ridiculous. And I was saying how they could potentially win 11 or 10 or 11 games, but based on the way divisions work and the way things work out, they may not make the playoffs because they end up 3rd in their division, right? The top 2 teams in their division goes ahead of them. And even if they were somehow, it was funny. My example was, if let's say the Steelers are the 7th best team record-wise in the AFC, they might get kicked out by a team that lands in the top 4 only because they win their division. And I use the AFC South, funny enough, as the example because with Derrick Henry out, I have no idea how the division is going to go. A lot of things could happen with it, right? You could somehow end up with a team only winning maybe 9 games, right? And I'm just making this up, of course. But if they win 9 games to make the playoffs, Steelers win 10. I was just saying it is so ridiculous to me. And it always has bothered me because the playoffs shouldn't be about just winning your division. It should be the best of the best making the playoffs. And so I find it so funny you bring that up. I was just having the conversation saying how it's just one of those things that really bothers me because I was a couple of years ago now that I believe the Texans were like 7-9 and they made the playoffs out of the AFC South. Why? Because they won their division, not because they were good. And then they got pummeled in the playoffs. They weren't deserving of it. And our division's another good example, not deserving of the playoffs. It just happened because that's the way the playoffs are set. And so I would agree with that statement very much so that it should be about the top teams because there are plenty of times where, you got a team that barely makes 500, kicks out, in our case, that number 7 team, and they get bumped down to 8 technically because that number 4 spot is that 1 through 4 is reserved for the division winners, which is beyond me.
Yeah, and I've never agreed with that, and I've always felt like it should be the top teams, and that's always been my case. If you can't win at least half of your games,
right,
you should not be given an opportunity to make to get a. That's the thing, you get a home playoff game. Do you understand what that does?
You're being handed an advantage because you won your division and your division stunk.
Well, it's also big for your organization because it's a lot of money.
Exactly. So you mean to tell me I just have to win my division, basically, is what I have to do in order to put money in the owner's pockets and then let a 11-5 or 12-4, 11-16 come into my house. Like they need to change that. I have been a huge proponent of that.
A lot of the time, in those instances that you're talking about, a team is basically making money and being rewarded for being at best mediocre. That's not a standard you want to set ever.
Our kids? What are we teaching our kids? Mediocrity gets rewarded.
You're right.
What do they say? C's get degrees. Is that what they say? Is that I mean,
that's I think hockey is a good example. That's why I love the way hockey playoffs are set up. The top teams make the playoffs. Period. End of story. You make the playoffs based on your points. That's it. If you win your division, you earned the win of the division because it's based on points, which is based on record. You legitimately, but you always earn it. I feel like that is, if you win your division, you really earned it usually. And more importantly, the best teams do make the playoffs almost every year. Nobody really gets snubbed. I wish the NFL did something like that just because I feel like there are years. I mean, you see teams that deserve to make the playoffs and just miss it. Why? Because their record wasn't good enough. And I know
we went 10-6 last year and we missed the playoffs.
Right. And I was going to say
that sucked.
We're running out of time here, so I don't want to go too long, but that's a good point, John. Another one I was going to say was, I don't remember what year it was, but you'll probably remember one of the two of you.
2002 when the Browns made it over us. We won 10 games.
No. The Chargers, when they had like the number 1 ranked offense and defense, but the record wasn't good enough to make the playoffs. I don't remember what year it was. They missed it, but I think it was because their record wasn't high enough because of the way the seeding works. I'd have to look it up. But it's just, those are the things that bother me because you'll see teams that really are the best and they miss because the seeding just doesn't make sense. And John, that is a good example of a team that realistically last year deserved to make the playoffs and they didn't. Only because
I think if you win double-digit games, I mean, you should be in the playoffs. I mean,
you should have at least a shot.
There's no reason. I mean, that's not like you're going 8-8, 10-6, or now 10-7. I think that's a good record. I think that's a good season. I'm not saying it's an elite season, but no matter what football team you are, that's a good season. That's a good record. 10-6, 10-7. I think double-digit wins always in the NFL is good, and you shouldn't be. You shouldn't have an opportunity to play for the Super Bowl taken away from you because you didn't win your division or you're not the best wild card. Like double-digit wins is always impressive to me.
I mean,
unless you're the Steelers last year because they were frauds. But
this year, look at the Cardinals. I mean, Cardinals, Rams are the top 2 teams. If the Seahawks make a comeback, with Russell Wilson comes back, they basically run the table and they win, let's say 11 games. They could miss the playoffs only because of that silly rule. of the way things work. Just think about that for a second, because their division was that good. The quarterback got hurt for a little bit. He came back. They ran the table. They missed the playoffs.
Well, they really don't have much of an excuse because there's not a whole lot of wild card teams that are going to take spots from them in the NFC.
I'm using that as an example. If that happened, the point I'm making is it would be kind of ridiculous because of the playoff system that's in place. That's all. I agree. If
the Saints are really their only threat to that 7th seed.
You're right. I'm just saying, if they were on the table, they'll make the playoffs. It's a matter of if at that point. But the point I'm making is it's a little bit unfair at times because you know what? If the Saints, let's say they win those games we were talking about earlier, right? And they deservedly, they win those games, they deserve to make the playoffs, and they miss it because of something like the Seahawks. Well, then that's not fair to the Saints because they may have really earned their postseason berth, especially after losing Drew Brees last year, and now they're starting quarterback in Jameis Winston this year. I mean, at that point, if you're going to win that many games, you deserve to make the playoffs.
Agreed, completely agreed. It's one of those things where you have to, and I apologize for going down the rabbit hole with you guys, but that is just something that it still to this day bothers me that we have not found a way to make sure that those who elevate their game are rewarded, and mediocrity is not.
I agree. All right, so we're just about out of time. I know we talked a lot of football. John or Eric, is there anything like important news that I or we already missed? I don't think we did. I think we kind of covered the major stuff. I know we talked about it before the show. Most of what's going on right now is football, really. I mean, baseball, we got the World Series wrapping up, and by the time people are watching this, it may already be over, and basketball and hockey are just starting. So
listen, as always, gentlemen, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much. This has been great. Jake, definitely going to have you on the Sports Arena again. Shameless plug, have you back on so we can definitely talk. I need another NFC East person because I'm sick of listening to Mike and Megan talk about Dallas.
I'll happily come talk about my terrible Giants.
Hey, you can you can come join the club, and you and me can just talk about how much we can't stand them Cowboys.
And don't listen to the show. You might not want to listen to the show tomorrow then, Jake, because it's an hour of Cowboys, and I'm not sure you or Eric can stomach an hour of Cowboys.
I don't know how
I'll listen because I always tune in even if I'm not on there. But yeah, and I do recommend tuning in because it's a sports arena and that's our show. But other than that,
be a tough one.
Giants fans, that'll be tough.
That sounds tough. All right, Eric, before we finish, where can they find you? Because we always do this. Where can they find you and all your work?
Oh, well, thank you again. As you see in my name here, this is my Twitter and also my IG at ECWilson76. Like I said, the Sports Arena every Monday and Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. The NFL Carousel, Alex Fleming's NFL Carousel every Thursday night, 7 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube. And pretty much, Orlando Magic games. I'm actually trying to, and I got to talk to my man, Jon Shearer. I'm trying to break into the Tampa Bay Lightning sometime this season. Definitely going to need some hockey knowledge because I'm green when it comes to that, but I am always willing to learn.
We'll take care of that with you. We got you.
Awesome. Excited for the rest of this season. We're in the second half of the, NFL, so I can't wait to see what that happens. And of course, come March or April, is when I get really hyped again because it'll be the return of the WNBA, and I am a huge, huge Chicago Sky fan. I've covered them the last 2 seasons. I was blessed to be there when they did win their first championship last month in Chicago. It was phenomenal, and I am all about supporting and advocating for women's equality, not only in the world of sports but overall. That is a big proponent for me. So,
absolutely.
Guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. John, where can they find you?
Oh, you know where you can find me. Fox Sports, 1340 AM, Cardiac Cane, Fin Fanatic, Sports Arena Monday and Wednesday nights, 10 Eastern Time. Alex Fleming's NFL Carousel Thursday nights from 7 to 8. I represent the Baltimore Ravens, and I will smoke whoever I go up against. I don't care who you are. Bluehawks13 on Twitter. And, I like my steaks well done. I have the most important place, most important.
I'm just muting him. I don't want to hear the rest of the spiel.
John,
I know how this goes. This
is DBNA television. I didn't stop talking. I just kept talking, muted or not.
Eric, we know. It's rough that he does that. I can't with him sometimes. I've been dealing with this for too long. It's ridiculous.
Burgers well done.
All right, John, you're cut off, buddy. You guys can find me on Twitter at Jake_Malik, Instagram and Facebook. Just look up my name. John, I am not out of order for telling people where to find me. That is not my fault. That is you, sir. More importantly, you can find Sideline Sports on Instagram and Twitter at Sideline Sport 1, YouTube, Facebook is Sideline Sports. We're on DBNA television every morning at 4 a.m. as of now. That may change. If it changes, we will let you guys know. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your audio podcasts. That's where you can find us.
Score, no score.
Score,
Don't
no
forget
score.
score, no
Yep,
score.
absolutely. We will be on there. We will play against you happily, and we will smoke you because
Yes, I'll
that's
do
what we
that there too.
And one last note before we go, John, I just wanted to point out I beat you this week in fantasy to improve to 8-0. I'm not saying anything. It had to be said. I had to say it out loud. I am 8-0 in one of our leagues, John. I am unstoppable.
I'm 7-1 in another
different
league, so let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, in that regard.
I just had to say that I beat you. I'm now 8-0.
I felt bad, so I had to kind of ease up a little bit on the gas.
That's what
drop
you
the
always
3 and 5 so I can make like a Chief. I'm like the Chiefs.
Yeah,
Gotta make it dramatic. That's all.
Yeah. All right. Other than that, that is all I have. John, Eric, anything else you have to say before we go?
Nope.
All right. Everybody, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.